Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 7th Annual Wild Wisconsin Winter Web Conference. I'm Jamie Machuk with the Wisconsin Valley Library Service, and I am moderating the marketing track today, and assisting me is the awesome Joy Schwartz with the Winnefox Library System, and we're so glad to have you here. Our first presenter in the marketing track today is Kathy Dempsey. And some of you might have heard of Kathy. She does a lot of blogging. She's known as the marketing maven. And she's going to be talking about the cycle of true marketing. So Kathy, whenever you're ready, please begin.
Thanks, Jamie, and thanks, Joy, for helping run all of this today. I love the concept of the Wild Wisconsin Winter Web Conference. I am coming at you from New Jersey, and we are not quite that wintry today. We had some crazy cold weather earlier this week, and today I awoke to 60 degrees and pouring rain. So very different over here. But it's so wonderful that we can be together online. So let's jump right in, because I have a lot of great information for you about marketing. And I'm so glad to be able to speak to you first today, because I'm going to give you the down low on what marketing really is, on true marketing. Now, a lot of people have different feelings about marketing, and they think it's all about sales, or they think it's about being pushy. Some people, when I start to talk about marketing, think about the basic, radio, television, social media, just putting out messages. But really, marketing is a lot more than that. It's not sales. It's not telemarketing. Please don't think about telemarketing while I'm talking about this today. It's really all about service, and marketing, true marketing at its core, is about providing better service to people by finding out what they actually want, and then offering that and telling them effectively that you are offering those wonderful things that they want and need. So I'm going to kick off the morning with a little quiz, and I'm going to ask each of you to take just a moment and match the first column with the second column. I have definitions on the right and commonly confused words on the left. So I'm actually going to stop talking for just a moment and give everyone time to scribble down their answers and match up the columns, and then I'm going to reveal the answer key.
Okay, so as Kathy mentioned, start matching up those definitions with the answer key. I'll give you a few more seconds to do that, and then she will review or reveal if we know the difference in these terms or not.
Yeah, people are often surprised by the actual definition. So this is, but this is not only a chance for you to check your marketing knowledge, it's a chance for me to help make sure everyone's awake before we continue. So hopefully everyone is ready. And if you're not, it's okay. Here is your answer key. If you want to just take a second to check what you wrote down. And then I'm going to move on and explain why this is what it is. Okay, no worries. So let's start at the very top. And this umbrella is especially good today since it's pouring rain here. I use an umbrella here because marketing is the umbrella term under which all of those other words fall. Everything else that you saw a moment ago is part of marketing. So as I said, it's about service. It is technically, by business definition, taking steps to move your goods or services from your producers to the consumers. It is determining what people want and then delivering it evaluating the customer satisfaction with it, and then updating that whole process to make it even better. So as I go through the rest of the definitions, hopefully that will make even more sense. These two words I put together because a lot of people confuse them. They think they're synonyms, but they're actually a little different. Public relations is the planned communication program that has a goal of convincing the public to have goodwill towards something. So when you're doing public relations, you are putting your name and your brand out there and trying to convince people that it's a good thing, they should think well of it. Promotion is really what most of us are doing when we say we're doing marketing. We're really doing the promotional part. And promotion is about furthering the growth or development of the product or service. It goes beyond goodwill. It's actually encouraging people to use it. So the way that I remember these myself, the difference is public relations and goodwill. Two words, public relations, goodwill. So that's just the beginning. But then going further, promo rhymes with grow. Okay, so promo, when you're doing your promo stuff, that is encouraging the growth and increasing the usage. So that's my little mnemonic, and don't know if that will work for you, but hopefully it'll help. Here's the other words. Publicity is what we call it when we send messages via different official channels. When you're sending news releases, or if you're having a press conference, if you're doing putting your info out on social media, that's publicity. Advocacy. I had to make that A, of course, right? Advocacy is technically getting other people who have good opinions of your organization to speak to others on your behalf. Advocacy is when other people say, oh my gosh, I just went to this event at the library. It was really helpful. I learned a lot of stuff. You should, check out what's going on at the library. Now, a lot of librarians today talk about doing their own advocacy, and that's fine and that's great. And having you speak up for your organizations and tell people all the wonderful things that you offer is valuable and wonderful. However, it is always more useful and more believable to get someone else to speak on your behalf, to train other people to be advocates for you. Just as, if someone comes up to you themselves and starts saying how really great they are, I'm wonderful, my business is great, I'm the best library speaker ever. That kind of sounds like bragging. But if a peer comes up to you and says, oh my gosh, I just listened to this webinar with Kathy Dempsey. She was funny. She was enlightening. She was fabulous. You hopefully will believe your peer more than you would believe me if I said it about myself. So that's a very important point that I want to make about advocacy. Try to get others on board to help you. Okay, these are a little bit easier now. Advertising is what we call it when you're paying for something. Advertising, technically, by business definition, is using paid announcements to get people's attention. Now, oftentimes we'll hear people use the oxymoron saying, oh, I got free advertising from the newspaper. But really what marketers call free advertising is in-kind advertising. If you have an agreement with the newspaper that you buy one paid ad per month, and then they run your ad a second time during that month for free, that is in-kind advertising. And finally, branding, the one that we're probably all most familiar with. That's about establishing the link between your company, your organization, and its logo or its color scheme or its font or its special name and catchphrase or tagline. Branding aims to make people associate the organization with the graphics or the words it uses, and it helps to build loyalty. Now, little bonus term in here, if you read about any heavy-duty marketing or read any professional marketing books or blogs, they will talk about a brand touch point. And what that is, it's an interaction between a brand and a customer. Any interaction at all that gives a customer an impression of your brand. So that's a brand touch point is people walking in the door of your library, seeing your entryway, seeing the desk or whatever they see when they first walk in. Any interaction with a staff member, any interaction at a desk is a brand touch point. Seeing your social media, reading your flyers, all of those are touch points that affect how people view your brand. So, little bonus there. But wait, there's more. Here's one more bonus term, content marketing, which emerged a few years ago. And initially that term was a little bit hard, I think, to wrap your brain around, because what are you always marketing? Well, your content, your services, what you have to offer. So initially it didn't really make sense, but what it is showing off your content, your services, without asking people to act on it. It is kind of promotion with no call to action. It's just telling a story, sharing an experience without beating people over the head at the end and saying, this is great, so you should use it. So I'm going to give you all 30 seconds of silence to read the little story in the box on the right as an example of content marketing.
While you're reading the story, I also want to mention that if you have a question for Kathy at any point during this presentation, you can type it in the question box, and when Kathy has prompts during your presentation, we will address those questions.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jamie. Okay, so as you can all see from this very short story on the right, there is nothing in here that says, the library is wonderful, please come use the library. But the story about our friend Sally said she was looking for something and the librarian helped her and it was really great and Sally met her goals. So it is left for the reader or the listener to imply, oh, library, she did that there. Well, maybe I should check it out too. So that's one example of content marketing. Okay, I'm going to hit you with a few more vocabulary words here because they're going to be important during the rest of the hour that we're together. If you've read anything about marketing at all, you've probably heard about the 4 Ps. They're the most basic marketing terms: product, price, place, promotion. And they also make a convenient tongue twister for speakers to try to get past. Let's go over them really quickly. Product, pretty obvious. But it's not always a physical product. It's sometimes a service that you provide. I'll come back to price in just a moment, because place is another easy one. Wherever you're providing the service, could be a building, could be outside your building, could be in a public park, could be a table at a farmer's market, could be an electronic kiosk somewhere. Promotion, which we've already gone over. Remember, promo rhymes with grow. So this is how you grow your business. This is how you encourage other people to use your products and services. So let me go back to price for a moment, because this is where some people get tripped up. Everyone thinks of libraries as free. We offer you all this service for free. And if you don't talk about the tax dollars and the grants and everything else that you get to support your organization, it looks free to users. But I want to alert you that even your free services are not technically free, because marketers measure user cost not only in dollars and cents, but in time and trouble. So if it's difficult to get to your library for some reason, if there's no parking in your area, or if there's a parking garage that's just very expensive and confusing and dark and intimidating, that is a barrier to usage. That is a cost that people pay to come to your library. If your open hours are short, if they're inconvenient, if people have to leave work early and rush to get there before 5 o'clock to pick up their holds, then that's another cost that they pay to use your service instead of just getting their books from Amazon or somewhere else and having them dropped at their doorstep. So you have to factor in the price that people do pay to use the library, because the lower the cost is for them, the more that they'll use it. Makes sense, right? Okay, SWOT analysis. Usually when I give this talk face-to-face and I ask people in the audience how many have ever been part of conducting a SWOT analysis, a good 2/3 of people raise their hands. I think this is pretty common. SWOT is used not only for marketing, but for strategic planning and lots of other things. So very quickly, I'll just explain that SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And when you brainstorm and you sit down and try to list all the things in these 4 categories, you want to remember that strengths and weaknesses are for internal things. Internal strengths, librarians usually list first their amazing collections or their intelligent staff members, all sorts of things like that. Weaknesses can be anything internal. Some list their collections and staffs as weaknesses also, depending. Budgets are usually something they list as a weakness because no one ever has all the money that they want. And so those are when you're looking inward. Turning outward, you list opportunities and threats as things external to your library. So opportunities are usually things like partnerships with other organizations, grant opportunities to get some grant money for projects that you want to do. And threats can be just about anything, from the threat of closure or the threat of having your budget cut to other organizations in town that give the same sorts of classes that you do, anything that really competes with you. So if you've never done a SWOT analysis, it's really kind of fun if you love brainstorming like I do. But what you're left with at the end are lists, 4 different lists, that really help you take a broad view of your library and its position in your community. And when I say community, that could be your town, your city, it could be your campus, it could be your organization, your hospital, your business, whatever community you serve. SWOT gives you a really good look at how you're positioned. So, after all those tongue twisters and all that terminology and vocabulary, any questions at this moment on the concepts or the underlying principles of marketing before we go a little deeper? And if you don't have questions yet, that's fine, but if you do, please go ahead and type them in the chat.
I'm not seeing any questions right now, but I have a question, Kathy.
Okay.
What 2 terms do you think people, or I guess those of us in the library profession, mix up the most when we're talking about marketing and publicity? And what do you often hear?
That is a good, and I'll go back just to remind people. I think the 2 that they confuse the most, actually 3, are public relations and promotion and publicity. But what I'm more concerned with, I think the bigger confusion is that most of these terms, except maybe branding or advertising, they think that all of these terms are synonymous. They think that all these things are marketing. And so if they do nothing besides just throw up a social media post and put a flyer on the bulletin board about a class they're giving the following week, not enough people see that promotion, nobody comes to the class. They say, oh, well, I tried marketing and marketing doesn't work. It's a waste of my time and money. I'm not going to do marketing anymore. When in fact, as you'll see even more in a moment, they didn't really do any marketing if they did not first find out if that class they were offering was something people wanted.
Right. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I know it seems kind of pedantic to go through all these words at first, but they'll all make more sense in just a second.
I
Any
don't
other
think I don't think they
questions?
are for many of us because I think it's good to go through these basics. So no questions
Okay.
right now. So please keep going.
All righty. So now here's where all these words come into play. This is the cycle of true marketing, which I created a number of years ago when I was writing my book, The Accidental Library Marketer, because I discovered that most library marketers are accidental. They did not study marketing anywhere else, including library school, before they got to work, and then they were having a class or they were giving a program or a story time, and there's no dedicated marketing person in the library, so the director says, hey, why don't you just promote your story time, on your own? Whatever you are working on, whatever project, you do your own promotion. And, oh, by the way, I know you have no background in this, but, whatever. Just make a poster, make a bookmark. That probably applies to many of you listening in this morning, meaning that you are accidental marketers. So what I did to help translate all this crazy marketing speak into something that makes sense to librarians, I read business marketing books, got definitions from Harvard Business Review and other places, and I put it together in this lovely cycle because I personally am a very visual learner. I want to literally see the big picture so that I can understand better what all the steps are and what the process is and why it should be that way. So I'm going to spend probably about 10 minutes on this particular slide explaining. As you can see on the very, very top center of the slide, the first step in the cycle is researching your audience. Find out who they are, what they're like, what their demographics are, what they want, what they need, what will make their lives easier. So this is what people call, obviously, market research, and corporations never release or even create any product or service without in-depth market research first. Of course, you're not a corporation. You don't have an extra $100,000 laying around probably to hire anyone to do this research for you. But there are a lot of simple ways that you can do it yourself. The first thing people think about is always surveys. Surveys are good. They can be very useful if the questions are well written, if you know exactly what your goals are before you start writing the survey questions and know exactly what you need to find out and what you don't, and you know a little bit about surveying or can take a webinar about it or read up on it, surveys can be very useful. Focus groups, also very useful. You don't have to hire a big fancy consultant to do focus groups for you. However, they should always be run by someone who is not employed by the library. Simply because if I'm sitting in a focus group that's being run by a librarian and she says something like, well, what could we improve? What do you not like about the library? I am going to maybe not be terribly honest with her because it's difficult to say to someone's face, you know what I think is really lousy? This. So that's just one reason to help make sure that people are as honest as possible in focus groups. But even if you're a solo librarian, you don't have time or staff or anything to do any of these crazy surveys, focus groups, anything like that, you can use your mad research skills to find information. If you are in a university library, then go to the university office, go to admissions, ask about each freshman class. Get the demographics for everyone at the school. How many first-year students come in every year? How many grad students? How many students come from other countries? Maybe English is their second language. How many groups of students in each major? And you can get a really good picture from data that other people in your organization have already collected. Same if you work in a corporate library. There's someone there who has a breakdown of, how many researchers, how many doctors, how many scientists are in this corporation, how many accountants are there, what are their skill set, what do they need to know, that sort of thing. And of course, if you're in a public library, you will want to go to your city council or county organization and get the demographics of who is in your service area. Even if you go across zip codes, you can get all that information from census data as well. Is ridiculously useful, because if you look at census data at census.gov, you can break down the information not just at the zip code level, but all the way down to what they call the block level. Who lives in this city block? What are their demographics? What are their education levels? How many children are in the home? What ages are they? And that should be helping you to plan all of your services and offerings. It's not about guessing what people want. It's about knowing and getting evidence and using that evidence-based data to help plan all of your collections, all of your services, and then consequently all of your marketing. So just a little stuff for you to do to get started. But again, it's very scalable. You can spend 6 months or 2 years doing all this research, or you can spend 2 hours at least getting the basics and understanding the basics of who's in your service area and your audience. Okay, so now that you have a ton of information about a ton of people, you want to approach them not all at once. You want to segment them into different target audiences. And segmentation is easy to understand, and yet most people don't do it very well. They don't make their segments narrow enough. For instance, let's go back to a public library example. Your whole library is already segmented to a point because you probably have a children's collection, maybe a children's room. You have maybe a teen area with resources and books and electronic things that suit the teen or the young adult market. Maybe you have large print for seniors. Maybe you have other different areas. But when you're promoting, you still need to break that down in a more narrow fashion. You just can't promote to, well, you can, but it wouldn't be as effective if you simply promote to like children, teens, adults, seniors. Because think about teenagers. Are all teenagers alike? And wouldn't life be easier if they were? But alas, boys and girls at that age are very different. A 13-year-old has very different interests and needs than an 18-year-old. So the reason that you break groups of people down into narrow target segments is that then you know exactly how to promote to them. You know what messages to write because you understand what they need and how they think and what language, so to speak, they use. A 13-year-old speaks in different lingo than an 18-year-old. They'll recognize different words. They will get their messages from different places. You would not put a marketing message for senior citizens on Instagram, and you would not do content marketing for teens in the weekly or the daily local newspaper, right? You know that different audiences look at different places when they're searching for information. So that's where the targeting comes in. The better you target your messages, the more effective they'll be, because people will actually see them and read them and absorb the information. Okay, happily, that, I know if you're looking at this cycle and thinking, oh my gosh, there's like 100 more boxes, the first two that I've just mentioned are, I think, the most labor intensive. So it gets a little easier from here on in. Okay, so the third box, then asking your targets exactly what they want and need. If you originally got your data from the census or from the county, that it's great demographic data, but it's not personal. So if you are trying to see what 17 and 16-year-old teenagers are looking for, talk to them specifically. If you have a teen advisory board at your library, then even sitting down for an hour with them, doing an informal focus group chat with pizza or something, saying, what's your life like right now? What do you want from the world? They will probably tell you they want ways to get better grades. They want to learn how to write papers faster so that their homework is done faster. They want to understand what to look for in a college, that sort of thing. So once you have some more data about what an individual target audience wants, then you can move to the fourth box. You can identify products and services that will suit them. I used to hear, and thankfully I don't hear this too much anymore, but when I used to advise librarians to ask people what they wanted and then, work on the products and services to fulfill those desires, librarians would say, no, you don't understand. I don't want to ask them what they want, because then the people will expect me to get it for them. They'll expect me to start this class on geology or something crazy that I don't know anything about. They'll expect me to make a list of colleges and tell them what to look for. And I try to calm people down by saying that usually that is not what happens. Most of the time, when you ask people what they want, it will be something that your library already has available. It's just that the people in your target audience don't know that it's available. So really what this step does is identify the products and services that you need to promote more effectively. Okay, I'm going to share a super quick story, my favorite focus group story, about a focus group I was running for a pretty good-sized public library system here in New Jersey. This was years ago. This was maybe 15 years ago. And I was doing a focus group with non-users of the library, which I always find fascinating. And so I said to the people, what does the library not have that you want? What could the library add that would make you come in and find it useful? And one man, who was clearly the man in the group who thought he knew everything, one man said, well, I find it difficult to look at all those little cards, that's so old-fashioned. I want to find information. I don't want to look at those cards. Why can't they computerize that? Why can't they have a computerized list of all their books that I can just search? Really, honest to God, he said that. And I tried so hard not to smirk and not to laugh. And I took a deep breath and gathered myself and said to him very kindly, well, sir, you're going to be really glad to know that the librarians have done that just for you. Nearly every library in the country now has computerized, and now there is a list of all the books and the music and the magazines and everything they have on a computer. And not only can you search it more easily in the library, you can search it from home. And the look on his face, his jaw dropped. I mean, because he hadn't been in a library for like 20 years, he didn't even know that they were computerized. And so this is my tale to help you see that oftentimes when people want things, you've already got them. You just aren't telling them in a way that is reaching them effectively. So, moving right along the cycle, now we're on the bottom right. I put there, identify your competition, because librarians so often try to do everything for everyone, which is a lovely way to be, except for burnout, and except you just can't offer everything to everyone. So looking at your competition can actually save you a lot of time and money, because perhaps you'll see that some of the things that you've been offering that people aren't using, if they're not coming to your knitting class, well, maybe it's because there's a really cool yarn shop across town that does its own knitting classes. Maybe they have been having classes for 3 years, and your library just decides, oh, I want to have a program on knitting, and if people come to it, maybe we'll make it every week, and blah, blah, blah. And you wonder why no one shows up. Well, everyone who likes to knit already knows about the cool stuff at the yarn shop. So instead of competing, maybe you'll decide to partner with the yarn shop, or maybe you'll decide to just leave that to them. And if someone comes into you or puts on a survey, I wish you would have a knitting class at the library, you can then respond, oh, thank you very much. We thought about that, but that's not something we're doing. Let me point you to this great thing across town. So sometimes you will decide that you can compete if you can do something better, or as I said, partner. If the yarn shop is small, doesn't have space, invite the people who teach there to hold their events in a room at your library if you have a big space. So, but looking at your competition is important, and it's not just competition for the same products and services. Also, you are competing, maybe more than anything else, for people's time. Remember, I mentioned the cost of people using the library, the cost of maybe driving to an area that's out of the way for them, or having to park 2 blocks away. So think about that competition for their time, and also timing. You don't want to hold maybe a weekly event for children on Saturday mornings at 10 o'clock. That may sound like a great time for the kids, except maybe the local soccer clubs or the baseball league plays games Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. and at 1 p.m. So you have to be aware of other things in the community that are competing for the time of your target audience too. Okay, finally we get into the marketing part of this. At the very bottom of the cycle, you probably all know that you need to set measurable goals for everything. Now you've decided, you've chosen a target audience, you found out what they want, you know that you already have that product or service for them, and that you don't have enough competition to prevent you from this offering. So now choose exactly what you're offering and set the goals for it. And of course, you want your goals to be measurable, meaning some of them at least need to be quantifiable. You can't just say, I want more people to come to my Saturday morning story times. You want to say, I want 10% more people to be attending my story times as a result of marketing in the next 6 months. So you take your benchmark measurement, how many people have come to Saturday story times for the past 4 Saturdays. Okay, there's your average. and then you do your special promotion to the right people with the right lingo, sending the messages in the right format for 6 months. And then you measure 4 Saturdays again and see if 10% more people are coming in. So simple as that. Going along with your goals is planning how you're going to evaluate your success. You want to plan that early because you need to be able to, say, take those benchmark measurements. You need to measure, take all your before numbers so that you can compare your after numbers with that. So make your plans to make sure that what you think you can measure actually can be done. Now, you'll notice, a quick aside here, we're finally just halfway through this cycle, and this is where you would write a marketing plan. Most libraries don't have actual marketing plans. They probably have a strategic plan, but not one specifically for marketing. And when I begin to talk to librarians, they say, okay, so the first thing we'll do is we'll sit down and we'll write our plan. But as you can see, how are you going to write that plan with no data? All the steps that we've gone through already on the right side of this cycle, you need all that information to put into your plan. You need to know something about your target audience. You need to have some numbers, some demographics. You need to know their wants and needs and your competition for meeting those wants and needs. So all of these things would go into your marketing plan, just in case you feel like writing one this year. Okay, halfway through, and don't worry, the rest gets much easier. So now is when finally, coming up the left side from the bottom, you finally get to promote these products and services. This is when you get to make your bookmarks and make your flyers and play with Canva and do fun social media posts or make videos or plan your advertising for the newspaper. All of these things that most people think of as marketing, you finally get to do this now, and you'll do it much more effectively based on all the evidence and information that you've already gathered. So rather than guessing, oh, for this thing, should I make a bookmark? Should I make a poster? Should I put that poster in the grocery store? You'll know exactly where to put your promotion and your publicity because you know who exactly you're talking to. Not everyone, but a certain group, and you'll know where they get their information, what social media platforms they're on, etc. So rather than guessing, we're just taking a scattershot approach and just plastering all kinds of information everywhere. You can see how that adds to everyone's information overload. If you can target your promotional information, you'll be much, much more effective. And the previous steps in the cycle will tell you exactly how to do that. So you've promoted your service, you've delivered the service, you've made it available. Now you're starting to get the feedback from people, the assessment. You may be giving them those infamous little half sheets of paper at the end of a program saying, how did you hear about this? Did you enjoy it? Would you come to this again? That's okay. That's one way to find out information. You may also, depending on your audience and what the service is, if you're targeting people who use your ebook services, then you're going to want to make your survey electronic and put it on the landing page from which they download their ebooks, things like that. The next to last step, I actually made it a step to study the feedback you get and to learn the lessons from it, because so often we get a bunch of data, we get a bunch of survey results or whatever, we're inundated with that, we have all of today's work to do and half of yesterday's work to do, and we think, okay, I'll look at this at some point, just whatever. You know, I was told to do an assessment, I did it, there it is. and you just kind of kick that can down the road, and you never really study it and use that data to improve your services next time around. So I made that a step on the cycle to remind everyone. Data's no good if you never look at it. And finally, the last step is to then use everything you've learned to improve your next go-round, because marketing really is a cycle. You're improving all the time. You may learn an amazing lesson during your first time through the cycle. That one spot where you put promotion didn't get any notice at all. It was totally useless. So you save yourself time in the next go-round, the next time you're promoting something similar, by skipping that promotion and maybe trying to put it somewhere else. So it's not only a cycle of constant marketing, but a cycle of constant information gathering and learning. And again, try not to panic, because this is scalable. You can take an entire year to do all this if you want, or you can take 3 weeks if that's all you've got. The important part is to get used to going through the steps, because each time you do, you'll know more, and it'll get faster and it'll get easier. Your promotion will be better and your usage will increase. So that was quite a lot to give you, and I pause here one more time to see if anyone has questions specifically on the cycle. And
yeah.
After this, I'll have just a few other things to go through. But
So
any questions coming in?
Yeah, one of the questions is, and I think you touched on this a bit, Kathy, what do you think is a realistic timeline for a library completing this? And I think you said, you could take a year to do this, or it could be something as simple as 3 weeks. Is that right?
Yes, it depends on what it is you're promoting. You can use this cycle for something as small as promoting your weekly story times, or for something as big as, doing publicity for a grand opening that's going to happen in 2 years when your new building is finished. So it really depends on, it can be as deep or as shallow as you need it to be, depending on your own circumstance.
Great. Another question is, how far ahead of time should libraries start planning for promotions?
Boy, that's a big question. It depends on your library system. Are you one small library, kind of a one-stop shop where 1 or 2 people do everything?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you a system of 30 branches that has a marketing department with graphic artists, and they're creating everything in-house, and they might want things 4 months ahead of time in order to give them 2 months to create and place all the promotional materials, so that people know about a big event 2 months in advance. If Stephen King is coming to speak at your library, you don't want to tell people the week before. You're going to have to do tickets and everything. So the sooner the better is the best way to do it, because also when you promote, you want to tell people something in advance to get it on their calendars, but then promote it again a week later, remind people a week later, and then maybe even put out last-minute reminders the day before.
Great, thank you. I did see another question come in, but I think I'm going to let you continue, and then we'll go to this one when you're finished.
Okay, all right. These last few slides are going to go over some basic information that you may have gotten from the cycle, but I just want to make extra points. One of the questions I get most often is, I swear I did marketing, quote unquote, for this great thing and nobody showed up. What's up with that? Why isn't my marketing working? Well, you may not be using the proper language for your target audience. Remember, if you're talking to teens, you have to speak like teens. If you're talking to professors, you better use slightly more erudite language to communicate with them. The placement of your promotion or the timing just might not reach them, and how you can do that better all ties back to the research that you did on that target audience to find out where they get their information. Your marketing communications may be great, but just not reaching them. You may not be putting it in the proper channels or platforms. One of the biggest things I see, especially with programs, is a lot of librarians decide what they want to do or what crafts they want to make, and then they plan the programs. They don't, and they just say, oh, I want to do this, so I'm sure other people want to do it. Don't assume. We all know what happens when you assume what someone else wants. And my mentor years ago told me something that has always stuck with me. Very simple phrase: never assume when you can ask. Don't assume you know what people want when you can ask them, because people's wants and needs change all the time, especially in this incredibly fast-changing life that we're leading now. And finally, you may have promoted the greatest thing. It may be something people want. Your promotion may have been great, but you might have it on a date or time that conflicts with other events in the community or the schools or something like that. So got to keep that in mind. Those same things will be reflected in these 4 most common mistakes: assuming that you know what your customers want without asking them, doing really simple promotion, sending press releases, and calling it marketing. People also don't separate others into target markets. You have to treat each group differently. Everything has to be customized for this generation of me, which is almost all of us at this point. And if you don't evaluate the results of your marketing in order to do better next time. Something else I know I've mentioned already, but I'm going to keep pounding this into you because it's important. Use the language of your target audience. Don't use library lingo. Don't talk about catalogs and MARC records and collections and databases. That doesn't make sense to people. Use other language for them. And talk about the benefits, not just the products. You can't, even if someone's looking for amazing, really useful medical information, don't look at them and say, oh yeah, we have Synahol. You can use that. Because what the heck is a Synahol? What is an EBSCO? Like nobody outside of our world knows what those things are. So instead you say, we have an online tool filled with vetted professional level medical information. That would be Synahol. Or, EBSCO, if you want to find a magazine article that you read 6 months ago, we have a tool for that. They don't have to know that it's called EBSCO Host because they don't care. To help you do that, I have one URL here, this eScholarship URL that you see, links to a portal of studies that a fabulous librarian did, where he asks people what words they do and don't understand and what words they would substitute for our words, like resources, databases, catalogs, things like that. So look a lot at your lingo, and this, in your spare time, check all your printed material. Do an audit of all your printed collateral material, or let me do it. Look at your website. Look at all the lingo that's probably on your website that is making it more difficult for people to find what you have for them there. So I think we have just a couple minutes left for final questions.
Yes, and the link that Kathy just shared, I did type in the question box. So if you want to click on that and bookmark that on your computer, go ahead and do that. Yep. A couple questions did come in, so let's get right to those. We have a few minutes left. The first one is, Kathy, when is the time to fit the PR or planned communications program into the marketing cycle?
When is the time to put the PR? Well, let me go back for just a moment here. Here on the left, on the bottom left, when you're promoting products and services, and I guess if the question is about when you're planning it, you can't really plan it until that's part of writing the marketing plan. And even if, again, a lot of places say, oh my God, I don't have 6 months and 50 grand to get help writing a marketing plan. You can have a tiny plan for every class or every event that you're doing. And so this will tell you, you'll need to back up from the date of the event. And, well, how soon should I alert people? Do I want to tell them the first time, maybe a month before? Then kind of back up from that. Or if you are in a type of library that has a newsletter or a calendar that shows 3 months at a time what's going on at the library, you have to look at the deadline for getting your information into that publication. So there's really no silver bullet. There's no set answer. It depends on your own situation and how many people you have to work on this. I'm not sure if that answers the question or not.
Great. So in Wisconsin, we have library systems. So that's actually who I work for. So one of the questions that came in asked, do you think it's practical to try to formalize this, formalize this marketing cycle for a bunch of libraries? Or is each library so unique that a formula for each step is not advisable?
It depends on how similar each of those libraries is. If they're really similar, if they're, a handful of libraries in a system, you could try to formulate it, but really I prefer that every event or service that needs to be promoted have its own plan. Now, let's say one library in your system comes up with a great plan for promoting its ebooks. And it's a cycle that's continuous because it's not one event with one date. Once you get that cycle down, you can share it among yourselves, but remember, the marketing has to work for each target audience. So how homogeneous is the audience in your system? In your part of Wisconsin? Is everyone totally incredibly rural? I mean, there are some cities there, and those people will work a little differently. And, maybe you'll have people who commute into the cities who want to download the ebooks. And the way you're going to reach them would be different from people who stay home all the time or work from home. So, again, it's really individualized, but you can, once you have your basic research information, you can use that information for that audience over and over again.
Great. One final question, and if you're not sure of something that's off the top of your head, please share this with me, and I can share this with the group. Can you recommend resources that would help a person write effective survey questions? Because this is something I struggle with.
I do have a couple. And I have, let me look those up, Jamie, if I could, and email them to you.
Yeah. And I will list those. Yeah, and I will list those on our conference website along with all the other resources.
Great.
Does that sound
good? Yeah,
awesome.
To me anyway. And if anyone has further questions, you see her on the last slide. You have all my contact information. You can email me questions, follow me on Facebook or my blog and get some more information there. So I'm happy to help anyone with anything marketing related as time goes on. Please use me as a resource and ask me anything that you like.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kathy, for a great session. We could keep going. I know. Unfortunately, we have to end on time. As mentioned, this session recording and slides will be posted on our conference website. Our next session in the marketing track is with Trenton Smiley. And that begins at 10:30 in just a half hour. So I hope to see some of you at that session as well. If not, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and so long.